Hello, welcome to the Codework. My name is Kaushik and I'm one of the co-founders of the Codework, and I'll quickly get started with today's video. Okay, so as you can see, today's topic would cover the fundamentals of an MVP. But before we go deep into this, I'll quickly like you to, visit our previous video where we have explained MVP in just 3 minutes. Okay, so go check it out. The links will be available in the description below. Okay, so now that you have an idea, you want to make an MVP out of it, right? But you need to make sure that you critically implement the key fundamentals into your product, right? Those are some of the key fundamentals that you'll need to succeed your MVP phase and go beyond that, right? So let's look at some of the fundamentals and try to understand the product perspective behind this. Okay, so the first fundamental that we have under MVP is functionality. Okay, followed by usability. Then we have design, and last but not the least, we have consistency. Okay, so I'll go into details with each of them and trying to make you understand with sufficient examples to this. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so the first thing to take into account is the functionality. The functionality of an MVP product defines the core value proposition that you want to put out to your customers. All right. So if you are innovating, evaluate your key features. If you are competing with other companies, evaluate your pricing, evaluate any other features that you want to show to your users. But put it in your platform in such a place where the users can or users may be able to, get it within 30 seconds of them landing to your platform. All right. So we'll show you some of the examples of the companies who might have grown or succeeded or might have failed due to their MVPs itself. All right, so let's take a look at each of them. Okay, so the first thing we have is Airbnb. Airbnb, which is now more than $100 billion company, is almost like a framework model for a lot of startups. Okay, and why so? Because of all the stories that they have and like how they have started out with their MVP product itself. Okay, so the Airbnb is quite interesting. The co-founders Joe and Brian wanted to do a short-term renting solution, and at that point of time there was a design conference happening in and around the city, and all the hotels got booked out. So they put together a small idea and got together a small website and collected few airbeds within their own apartment itself, right? And almost immediately three people booked it. So their core idea got validated right in front of their own house itself. Okay, so another key concept with Airbnb, and it is actually the best example to show you, is that MVPs are not only important in the beginning stages of your company itself. It can be helpful in the growth stages itself. Okay, so to give you an example with this, Airbnb, once they started scaling, right, they figured that a lot of their properties were not getting enough bookings that they intended to, right? So what they did was they bought a high resolution camera and got good quality pictures for those properties, and almost immediately they started getting twice x thrice x bookings than the rest of the properties that they had, right? So it gave them an instant validation, and they grew with this MVP mindset itself, right? So this was Airbnb story. So let's take a look at some of the other examples as well. We have Spotify and Product Hunt under this functionality for uh, MVP, right? So Spotify's idea was to be the best music streaming platform without the need to download, right? So to test their core idea, they developed a desktop app. Okay, but one of the key things that did was to reduce latency to the maximum level. Okay, this is something that they have worked upon tremendously, and the users almost liked it immediately when they got to use the product, and they grew big after that. And once they started growing big, they developed their app and every other platform itself, right? So Spotify's core value proposition was to, reduce the latency in the music streaming itself, and it worked like a charm for them. Okay, so the other another and for Product Hunt, the idea was to build a community of product enthusiast people itself. Okay, so the founder, Mr. Ryan Hoover, was a product person himself, right? And how they tested out their own hypothesis was to use a platform called LinkedIn. Okay, it's a link sharing platform where you'll be able to create groups and share your links among each other. And almost immediately, more than 150 people of investors and a lot of other media persons got involved within the product, and then they started growing almost immediately out of there. Okay, so as I have already mentioned, functionality is the core value proposition that you want to put out to your customers. Okay, but make sure your customers need to see it within 30 seconds of them landing to your platform. All right. So now that we have already covered the functionality aspect of our fundamentals in MVP, we'll quickly move forward to the usability front of it. Okay, so what is usability? Why do you actually need usability in your MVP, right? So, well, usability actually defines how quickly or easily your users can adapt to your platform. Okay, so your platform needs to be intuitive enough, and you always need to think about your target audience while building your product. Okay, so usability always will dictate you to keep your audience in mind. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the examples where the companies might have succeeded or failed due to usability in their MVP. Okay, so the first example that we have is Nokia Engage. So this is actually a failure story, and this particular product had multiple usability issues and they couldn't survive after a couple of release. Okay, so Nokia released this particular phone in early 2000, and I don't know how many of you remember this. They did it to compete with Game Boy. Okay, so Game Boy was a gaming console, it was fun to use. It was simple enough for users to get adapted to. But Nokia tried to integrate a phone around this particular segment. All right, but at the same time, they had major flaws in this particular product. The primary one was the speaker was on the side panel, right? And if someone had to make a call, right, they had to pick the call in a sidewise, which was not convenient for the users. Along with it, they also, if you needed to install a new game, you had to remove the battery, and a lot of other issues were there. So instead of giving the users multiple actions in the same product itself, they unintentionally created more hassle for the users. Okay, and another controversial issue happened around the phone was the taco was people started calling it the taco phone. Okay, so Nokia actually tried to deal with this particular problem by re-releasing it with a different shape, but they couldn't survive due to the other usability factors that they couldn't fix at that point of time. Okay, so we'll take a look at some of the other examples as well under this usability front, and we have Dropbox and Slack. Okay, so the reason I did not start with Dropbox is because it is almost overly popularized. Almost everybody knows how they started their MVP, but I would still like to give a little bit of details into this. Like the founder, Mr. Drew Houston, he made a video synchronize a video. He made a video of how you can actually do your file synchronization across all computers, be it your office computer, be it your PC. You can easily transfer all your files from one place to another without any hassle, and it almost immediately resonated with everyone. And right after this video, right, the users waiting list almost immediately blew up over the line. So this particular type of video MVP was almost trademarked by the founder, Mr. Drew Houston himself. Another major startup which went big was Slack. Okay, so Slack went big due to its usability features itself. Okay, I'll come down to this later on. But first of all, let me give you what Slack does. Basically, Slack is a collaborative tool for business platforms. Okay, and like you can communicate within your teams or across organizations. But the major factor behind their success was a two-way method. Okay, the primary one was the user onboarding method. They made their user onboarding method so smooth that everyone who shifted from different platforms, right? They made sure that they had no hassle, or they faced no trouble while doing so. Okay. The other is integration of other business tools into their platform. It was a creative idea of putting together a great product for their users. So, like I already told you, its usability defines how you easily your users can adapt to your platform, and you always keep your customers in mind while doing so. The next thing we have in line is design. Okay. So by design, we do not necessarily mean beautiful looking products, but it is the user experience that you should focus upon. How easily your users are able to navigate through your product. This is something that you should work upon from as early as your MVP product itself. Okay. So let's try to look at some of the examples that we have and try to understand the design aspects of it. Okay. Okay. So the first product that we have is Facebook Home. Now, Facebook Home was a very interesting product, but it failed to make it into the market, right? And one of the major reasons for it was the design flow that it had. Okay. Now Facebook Home was targeted for Android users, and they intended to make a phone as a live Facebook news feed itself. Okay. But one of the major thing that they overlooked was almost all the Android users are used to using widgets, which the Facebook Home didn't give you the provision for, right? So a lot of people didn't approve of this, and eventually it had to fade out, right? So let's look at some other examples as well. The other examples that we have are, one of them is Google Glass and the other is BlackBerry phones. All right. So now that you look into a Google Glass product, right? Do you consider or do you see yourself using it into a workplace or any other private gathering that you have? No, right? So even though it was tech heavy, it couldn't cross the barrier of a layman usage. And besides that, a lot of people had major privacy concerns regarding the product. So after a point of time, they had to stop the time into the project itself, right? And if you look into BlackBerry, so BlackBerry is a classic case of companies which couldn't keep up with the innovations that has been happening around the market, right? So when Android and iPhone started coming up into the market, when smartphones were not at something of a distant future, right? BlackBerry still introduced phones with touchscreens as well as at the same time with the keypads, which were repetitive and something that the user didn't want anymore, right? So eventually they couldn't keep up with the innovation and started dropping market shares. So in a nutshell, if you look into the design aspect, right? Uh, a design aspect under your MVP can be very minimal, but at the same time, you should consider making it very focused towards the user experience. Okay, so now that we have almost reached to the final segment of the video, if you find the video interesting, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe it. Okay, so let's take a look at the final segment under the fundamentals of an MVP. And what do we have? We have consistency. Okay, now consistency defines your ability to solve problems on each of the iterations that you do, right? Without losing the brand identity that you have created for yourself. Okay. Uh, at the same time, it also serves you, with the purpose of keeping all your products consistent across all the platforms that you serve in, right? Irrespective of the stage that you are serving in, your products needs to be consistent across all the platforms that you are uh, servicing in. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the examples under this. Okay, so the first example that we have is Pepsi versus Coca-Cola. Right. So these are the two big giants under the beverage industry, and they have always gone head to head for each of the campaigns that they have done so far. Right. And Pepsi has always been a consistent winner due to its slightly sweeter taste. Okay. Now, to address this issue, people at Coke once tried to, readjust their formula and rebranded it as New Coke, right? But by doing so, they unintentionally attack their own value proposition. They are unintentionally attack their own, brand identity itself, right? So they couldn't gather enough coverage, or people didn't like it too much, and eventually it had to fade out from the market. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the other examples as well. So what do we have? The first thing that we have is Adobe Design Tools, and we have BBM services by BlackBerry. All right, so Adobe Design Tools is actually a brilliant product. I'm pretty sure all the designers have used it at some point in their projects. All right. So one of the major reasons for their success is due to the consistency that they have pulled up across all the products that they have. All right. Be it Photoshop, be it Illustrator, they made sure that user adaptability is pretty smooth across all the platforms that they have. So this is one of the main reasons of their success. Okay. So let's move on to the final example under the video, and that would be BBM services by BlackBerry. All right, so BlackBerry revolutionized the messaging services under their BBM app, and the features that they provided, right, like status updates, um, pinging users, as well as creating groups, those were like the first in the market. But one of the major mistake that they did was keeping it exclusive for only for the BlackBerry mobiles, right? Soon WhatsApp, Kik, and other messaging services started entering into other phones, and soon they dominated the market, right? So when BlackBerry figured that they also need to, release it for other phones, they couldn't keep the standard at the same level that they had on BlackBerry. So eventually, when BlackBerry started losing their market share, BBM also lost the target audience that they deserved. All right. So this is what we have under consistency. So as I already told you, uh, under consistency, you don't necessarily have to, uh, produce all your, you don't have to release all your products under all the platforms at the same time. At the very beginning, you don't have to do that, right? But at whatever stage you are in, or at whatever stage you are releasing your products into multiple platforms, be sure to make it consistent. Okay. So in each of the iterations that you do, make sure your product aligns with your brand identity. It is consistent across all the platforms that you are servicing in. Okay. So this is all that you need to cover as a fundamental for your MVP. You can also find a detailed blog that we did on MVP. The links will be available in the description below. Stay tuned for more updates on our ongoing MVP series. Please do not forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. See you soon.